She stood at my door like she didn't mean to be there, but she wasn't leaving either. It had been 3 weeks since I last saw her, Sanaa, my mother's old friend from the neighborhood, now just Sanaa. The one who used to sit across from me at our kitchen table, sipping weak tea and asking about my studies while avoiding any mention of her own life. The one who once looked at me for too long when she thought I wasn't looking back. Tonight, she wasn't sipping tea or looking away. She was standing in my room, holding something in her hand. "You left this," she said, eyes low but voice steady. Then she added, "Or maybe you meant to." It was the book I lent her. A short poetry collection. Neruda. I had written something stupid in the margins of one of the pages. I wasn't sure if she had seen it, or if she was here because of it. I stepped back to let her in without saying a word. She didn't move. "Do you want me to come in?" she asked, soft but not timid. My throat was dry. "I didn't think you would." She finally walked past me. No perfume, just a faint smell of rain on her coat and something warm underneath, like cinnamon. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the book on the small table near the window. The room was quiet. Just the sound of the fan spinning above, and somewhere outside, a dog barking. She didn't sit. I didn't either. "You didn't come by," she said, brushing something invisible off her sleeve. "I thought maybe I'd made you uncomfortable. I didn't come by because I didn't know what I'd say." She looked up. Her expression was unreadable, but her lips were pressed too tightly together. A defense mechanism, maybe. Or a habit from her old life. Sanaa had always been composed. Graceful in a way that didn't try too hard. But tonight, her coat was creased, her scarf loosely wrapped, and her eyes, they held something fragile. Like she had rehearsed coming here and still didn't feel ready. "You wrote something in that book," she said suddenly. "On page 47? My heart thudded. She had seen it. "I was tired," I said stupidly. "It wasn't bad." She turned then, fully facing me. There was a strange kindness in her eyes, like she didn't want me to regret it, but also didn't want me to pretend. "You know I'm older," she said. "You know that, right?" "I know. And it's not simple." "I didn't ask for simple." We both stood there, unsure of the next step. The silence stretched. She glanced down at her hand. She was still holding the book, even though she'd already placed it down. Maybe out of nervousness. Maybe she didn't realize. I could feel something unspoken between us, something that had been building over long stares, interrupted conversations, and the way her voice always softened when she said my name. "I didn't come here to start anything," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "Then why did you?" She looked at me, really looked at me. Like she was measuring the risk, or maybe the loneliness. Then her lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but she didn't. That's when my phone buzzed on the table. She flinched at the sound. I reached for it without looking, but my eyes never left hers. And then, just as I turned the screen over to see who it was, she reached out and touched my arm. Just lightly. Just enough. She let her hand linger for a second too long. Not enough to be obvious. But enough for me to notice. And I did. I didn't pull away. She stepped back almost immediately after, like the contact had startled her too, or maybe scared her a little. She turned to the window as if it suddenly had something worth looking at. Outside, the street was quiet, lit only by the soft orange glow of the corner lamp. My reflection hovered just behind hers in the glass. "I was married for 16 years, she said quietly. "I didn't plan on talking about that tonight." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't sure if she wanted a response. "Most of those years were quiet," she added. "And not in a peaceful way. I nodded slowly. I never asked about her past, only picked up pieces through overheard conversations and things my mother mentioned when she thought I wasn't listening. I guess I got used to being invisible, she said, almost laughing, but not quite. I stepped closer, but not too close. You're not invisible to me. She looked at me then, but only briefly, like the weight of eye contact was too much. Her eyes darted to the book again. You wrote, "Some things don't belong to time, they belong to courage." I swallowed hard. I didn't think you'd read that. I did. 3 times. She touched the spine of the book. I didn't know if that line was for me. I hesitated. It was. But not just for you. She finally sat down, crossing her legs carefully, like she needed to stay composed. I sat across from her on the floor, leaning back against the edge of the bed. The air felt heavier now, not with tension, but something softer. Honest. My son's your age, she said after a pause. Well, a few years younger. That should bother me more than it does. That was the line, the edge we were both aware of but hadn't fully named until now. I let the silence stretch before I answered. I'm not trying to be your son's friend. Her lip twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Good. You'd be terrible at it. I exhaled a laugh. She did too. The air loosened a little. I wanted to tell her everything. How I'd thought about her voice when she wasn't around. How I noticed the way she paused before answering questions, like she was trying not to reveal too much. How I memorized the shape of her hands the day she dropped her keys in our hallway and crouched to pick them up. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I reached forward slowly, brushing the edge of her scarf, like I was fixing it, though it didn't need fixing. She didn't stop me. And for a moment, brief, breathless, we both sat like that. Her eyes on my hand, mine on her face. Neither of us said what we were thinking. But we didn't need to. We were still frozen in that moment when the front door slammed shut. Sanaa jerked back like she'd been burned. Her scarf slipped off her shoulder, and she fumbled to pull it back up. Who's that? She whispered. I stood up quickly. My roommate, Adil. He wasn't supposed to be back until morning. Her eyes widened. She ran a hand over her hair, then glanced around the room like she just remembered where she was. The intimacy shattered. Guilt rushed in like a draft under a closed door. She whispered, I shouldn't be here. But she didn't move. I stepped toward her again. Quiet. Careful. You're not doing anything wrong. She looked at me then, really looked, and I knew she didn't believe me. Or maybe she wanted to, but couldn't afford to. Footsteps thudded down the hall. Yo, Zion? Adil's voice came through the door, casual but getting closer. Sanaa stepped back into the corner. Instinctive. Like she didn't want to be seen. My pulse jumped. Just a sec. I called out, louder than I meant to. I crossed the room, opened the door a crack. Adil blinked. Oh. You okay? Yeah. Just working on something. I'll be out later. He nodded, shrugged. Didn't mean to interrupt. As soon as the door clicked shut again, I turned back. Sanaa was gathering her coat, her hands moving too quickly. You should have told me someone lived here. I didn't think it mattered tonight. She didn't answer that. Just pulled the scarf tighter around her neck. I stepped closer again. Don't go like this. I should have never come like this. She snapped, then immediately looked regretful. I didn't mean that. There was silence. The kind that hums in your ears. I was married to a man who didn't touch me for the last 4 years, she said suddenly. Not a hug. Not a hand on the back. Nothing. I couldn't breathe for a second. I forgot what it felt like to want someone, she said softer now. Until you. That confession sat between us, hot and heavy and impossible to ignore. I reached for her hand, slow again, like asking permission. She didn't stop me this time. But then she said, "Zion, if this happens, I can't undo it. I can't explain it away. Neither can I." Her eyes flickered to my lips, just once. A hesitation. A second too long. I leaned in. She didn't stop me. But just before we touched, a breath apart, she pulled back. "No," she whispered. "Not here. Not now." A beat passed. My heart was still in my throat. She reached up and fixed my collar gently. The same way someone would fold a page back in a book. Careful. Meaningful. "I should go." She walked to the door. Paused. Then, without turning around, she said, "Next time, don't leave the door unlocked." I didn't hear from her for 4 days. No calls. No messages. Not even the usual glance from across the street when she walked by our building in the mornings. Just silence. I told myself to let it go, that she was older, wiser, and had probably snapped out of whatever that moment was between us. But the truth settled heavy in my chest. I missed her. More than I wanted to admit. On the 5th night, I walked past her house. The light in her study was on. Just one lamp, low and flickering. I stood across the street, half hoping she'd see me. Half terrified that she would. And then, the curtains moved. I froze. Seconds later, the door opened. Sana stepped out, coat draped over her arm, scarf loose again like she hadn't really planned on going anywhere. She didn't look surprised to see me. "You've been watching my house?" she asked, voice calm but tight. I swallowed. "No. I mean, yes. Not like that. I didn't know how else to, don't," she cut in. "Don't say you just happened to be here." I stepped off the curb, hands in my pockets. "You disappeared. You kissed me with your eyes and then left the door open for someone else to walk in," she said quietly. That scared me. I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't used to hearing her speak with that kind of edge, not angry, but vulnerable in a way that hurt to hear. She walked past me and stopped on the sidewalk, not turning around. "You don't know what this would cost me, Zion. I'm not asking you to pay anything," I said, voice low. "Yes, you are. You just don't see it yet." I took a shaky breath. "Is that why you disappeared?" She turned to face me. "No. I disappeared because I wanted to stop thinking about you every time I walked into a quiet room." There it was. The truth, raw and unrehearsed. "And did it work?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No." Her voice broke slightly. "It made it worse." We stood there under the streetlight, shadows stretching behind us like pieces of a decision we couldn't make. "I saw you with someone yesterday," she said suddenly. "The girl in the blue dress." I frowned. "That was Adil's cousin. She's married. She was showing me a recipe. You don't have to explain," she said, even though she clearly wanted me to. Jealousy. I hadn't expected it from her. But now that I'd seen it, I couldn't unsee it. "You think I could just look at someone else now?" She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to agree, but I didn't let her. "I can't stop thinking about you either, Sana. Every night. Every time someone says your name, I look up like it means something." She took a single step toward me. Another step. We were close again. Breathing the same cold night air. My hand lifted, almost on its own, to brush her cheek. She didn't stop me. And just as I leaned in, her phone started to ring. She didn't look at her phone. It kept ringing, that sharp, ugly sound cutting through the moment like a knife. Her hand hovered over her coat pocket, frozen. "Should I?" I started. But she'd already answered. Sana speaking. Her voice was clipped neutral. Too neutral. Then her expression changed. No words for a moment. Just silence. She turned away from me. No. I'm just. I stepped out for a walk. Another pause. And then, barely audible. Why are you calling me now? I felt my chest tighten. Her posture had changed. Shoulders drawn in. Chin dipped slightly. Like she was bracing for something. When she hung up, she didn't turn around. Not for a long time. Finally, she spoke. That was my ex-husband. I blinked. What? He wants to meet. Says he's coming back into town next week. Her voice was quieter now. He never calls unless he wants something. Which means he probably already knows something. You think he knows about us? She didn't answer. Which was an answer in itself. My jaw clenched. Are you scared of him? She turned toward me, and for the first time tonight I saw it, actual fear. Not just worry, not hesitation. Fear. He never hit me, she said. But he knew how to disappear me in a room. He knew how to make me question everything about myself. And now, when I finally start to feel something real again, he calls. Her voice cracked at the end, and she pressed her hand to her forehead like she was trying to keep everything inside. I stepped closer. You don't owe him anything. I owe myself peace, she said. And you deserve someone who doesn't flinch every time the past knocks on the door. I could feel it, the walls starting to rise between us again. But this time it wasn't shame or awkwardness. It was fear. Raw and full-bodied. And then she added something I didn't expect. He thinks I'm seeing someone, she said. He said my neighbor told him. That you came by. That they saw you. It hit me like ice water. Someone had seen us. Maybe that night she came into my room. Maybe earlier. But someone noticed. And talked. Does your mom know? She asked, voice fragile. I hesitated. She suspects. She hasn't said anything, but she's been acting different. Sana looked away. Then this is already falling apart. No, I said. No, it's not. She finally looked at me, and I could see it in her eyes, the heartbreak already blooming behind them. The guilt. The panic. The old habits of survival fighting whatever she felt for me. And I didn't blame her. But I couldn't lose her. I don't care who knows, I said. I'm not ashamed. But I am, she whispered. That cut deeper than anything. A silence fell between us. And then footsteps. From behind. I turned. My mother was standing at the gate. Staring straight at Sana. Not angry. Not surprised. Just disappointed. Sana's hand slipped from mine. My mother didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The way her eyes shifted between me and Sana said everything. Not rage, not even shock, just a quiet kind of hurt. Like she'd already guessed the truth but hoped it wasn't real. Sana stepped back instinctively, putting distance between us like it would undo something. I turned to her, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother spoke first. Zion, come inside. Her voice was calm. That made it worse. Sana's eyes finally lifted to mine, glassy but unreadable. She deserves honesty, she said softly. So do you, I answered. But she was already turning away. Not running. Just retreating. Like this was always how it had to end. No, I said, stepping in front of her. Not like this. She stopped, breathing hard. What do you want me to do, Zion? Stand in front of your mother and tell her I've been coming to your room? That I feel things I'm not supposed to feel? Then I haven't slept properly in weeks because I keep wondering how badly I'm going to hurt you just by letting this go on. Yes, I said. Because it's the truth. Her lips parted, then closed again. She looked exhausted. But underneath it, I saw something else. Hope. My mother still stood at the gate, watching. Sanaa turned slowly to face her. I didn't mean for this to happen. My mother didn't flinch. I know. I was lonely, Sanaa said, voice barely above a whisper. Not just for company, for feeling alive again. For someone to see me without pity. Silence. My mother exhaled, stepped closer, and looked at me. And you? I'm not confused, I said. If that's what you're asking. She studied me for a long time. Her expression softened, but not much. Then she looked at Sanaa again. I won't pretend this makes sense to me, she said. But I know what it feels like to be forgotten in your own life. Sanaa's breath caught. I saw it. My mother gave a small nod, not approval, but understanding, and walked inside without another word. The gate clicked shut. Sanaa stood frozen in place. You didn't have to say anything, I murmured. Yes, I did. Her voice was trembling now. Because I was about to walk away from the one thing that's felt real in years. She looked at me then, really looked. But this, us, still terrifies me. I don't need promises, I said. Just don't lie to yourself anymore. We stood like that, the air between us full of everything we hadn't said, and everything we had. No more secrets. It was in the quiet things, the way she looked from my face in a crowd, or how I started leaving a chair pulled out for her at the kitchen table, even if she wasn't coming by. Some days we texted too much, some days not at all. But there was always a thread holding us in place, even if we didn't know what name to give it. My mother didn't ask questions again. She simply made space. She didn't smile when Sanaa visited, but she didn't frown either. And in our house, that was permission. The neighbor who'd made that call to Sanaa's ex-husband eventually stopped looking out her window. Maybe she lost interest. Maybe she realized there was no scandal here, just two people trying to find warmth again, slowly, without apology. Sanaa and I met in quieter ways after that. Walks that turned into hours. Coffee that turned into dinner. She never stayed too long, never crossed that final line. But sometimes, I'd wake up to a message she'd sent at 2 a.m. One word. Still? And I'd always write back. Still. She told me more about her life, how she stopped painting after her son was born, how her husband didn't like the smell of turpentine in the house, how she'd once wanted to move to Istanbul, just because the words sounded like longing. I listened. Memorized it all. And in return, she listened to me talk about everything I never shared with anyone else. My fear of being average, the shame of not knowing what I wanted, the ache of wanting someone I couldn't talk about out loud. We never labeled what we had. Maybe we didn't need to. One night, weeks later, I found her standing by the park bench where we first sat months ago. She didn't notice me at first. She looked tired, but not in a way that made her seem weak. In a way that made her feel real. I sat beside her. She didn't say anything for a while. Then, I used to think I ruined everything I touched. I looked at her. You didn't ruin this. She finally turned to me. Her eyes held something new, not fear, not guilt. Just peace. The kind that comes when you stop fighting yourself. We may never make sense to other people, she said, but maybe that's not the point. It never was, I told her. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. We just sat there, shoulder to shoulder, watching the city breathe. For the first time, we both felt like we belonged somewhere. Even if it was just right here. Even if only for now. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Something forbidden? Something healing? Something that feels like a secret only you understand? Tell me. Let's build the next one together.